Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you. Nice to see some people I haven't seen for a little while. Nice to see everybody. Um, Interesting times in line with the Chinese curse. What we're planning to do over the next, looks like it might be about 7 years, is to, I'm going to be 64 sessions is the idea, is to look at the relative hexagram of every month as the months arise. So this month is a water dog, for instance, whose hexagram is sway gathering number 45. What I'll aim to do is to talk as abstractly enough to make it useful, but also as kind of pointedly enough that it may relate to things that are happening now, because obviously the underlying principle, as above, so below, is that the sort of things we're looking at this hexagram describing may occur in your domestic life, in your business life, in your inner life, but also internationally, politically, and so on. As I said, I don't want to be too specific, but here now in October 2023 is a very tumultuous time. It's a very interesting and not that nice things going on that seem to be very consistent with this. So we'll look at the components of the hexagram and we'll pick out some meaning from it. And then towards the end of this, we'll look at the way that the lines change. And I'm just admitting Claire White does. We'll look at the way that the lines change and which hexagram that introduces. So I aim to do that in order, but we'll see whether that actually works. Claire has just joined us. Claire, can you mute yourself, please? Because we're actually started now. It'll get confusing otherwise. Great, thank you. So I'm going to carry on now. So we have sway, sometimes spelled C-U-I, sometimes S-U-I, which consists of lake over earth. Lake, of course, is the youngest daughter. Earth is the mother. So there are immediately implications of mother-daughter, implications possibly of a need for security. And with a hexagram, it may be telling you what's going on. It may be telling you what's about to go on. It may be telling you what your choices are. And it is the nature of being getting intelligent use from these things to not be too fixed on which of those things it might be. So allow yourself to see it in whatever is the useful way for you to see it. So lake over earth, third daughter, youngest daughter over mother, something about security, something about gathering together, something about family. All of those are pretty orthodox interpretations. There are 4 yin lines and 2 yang, so it's slightly unbalanced, but you will notice that the yang lines are at the ruler, the leader, the emperor, the 5th line. In this case, technically, that line is one of the rulers. That technically the ruler of a hexagram being the one that's the most helpful, the most typical, but also the 5th line represents the emperor or the ruler, the king. So in this case, it's both. And next to it's another yang line underneath. And that may be a mixed blessing, because in order to cooperate, we need yin and yang. I mean, in order to be fertile, we need yin and yang. In order to be creative, we need yin and yang. So as some of you will know, I mean, those who've worked with me for a while will know, and others, that there are various forms of communication that the lines enter into. So classically, the first line has a connection with the 4th, and the second with the 5th, and the third with the 6th. And also classically, of course, as I said, to make it fertile, yin meets yang and yang meets yin. So there is a connection between the first line, in this case, the yin first line, and the yang 4th line, and the yin 2nd line, and the yang 5th line. But the yin lines are basically a bit weak. It is only line 2 that is correctly placed, and it is not firm. So we have, these are kind of losties, these these 3 lines. And again, classically, the 5th line is the ruler, the king, the emperor, whatever. The 6th line is ascending. It's to do with spiritual concerns and ethics and so on. But the 3 lower lines are to do with the people. The 4th line connects the ruler with the people. So the pivot of this, if you like, and one of the 2 rulers technically, is the 4th line, which is the advisor. So if you like, you have this yang, firm ruler at the 5th, you have this advisor at the 4th, and you have the people lower down. And what this is about gathering together. And there are different sorts of gatherings. Broadly, there are assemblies and there are mobs and others in between. But the difference between an assembly and a mob is leadership. And the test of true leadership is integrity. And one of the themes that runs through this hexagram is one of people needing leadership, needing direction, but needing leadership that is appropriate to follow. So you might say this is about the difference between a populist and someone who actually serves. The ruler being that. You might say it's about the kind of advice a ruler might get, and of an advisor, a connection, a minister, if you like, who tells the leader what they want to know. In this time of populist leaders, it's very tempting to make that connection, to say that this is about the difference between leaders who give the people what they want to, give the people ideas that they are demanding, which tends to be feeding the mob, and those who give them ideas that require a little bit of discipline and concentration. The relative pillar is a water dog, is an earth dog, a water dog, sorry, a water dog. So there's earth and water. Earth and water don't mix. Technically, I'm told, I'm no scientist, but chemically, earth and water make what's called a suspension. They do not form what is called a solution, which is a very interesting word. So we have this potential to join, which may or may not be picked up on. And as I say, we'll look at that more specifically in relation to right now a little bit later, but we'll keep it as abstract as we can. So that if you throw this hexagram, you can make draw these kinds of conclusions. The nuclear, that is, there is a formula for producing this, but technically that means where it comes from is hexagram 53, gradual progress, which is wind over mountain. And you'll remember that is the little tree on the mountain, puts down roots so it can then grow leaves and grow branches, puts down further roots, grow leaves and branches, and so on, is very careful to have a strong foundation before it gets too brave. Often compared to the glass ceiling, you know, where the peak of achievement for many women, the glass ceiling, where men, for biological and historical reasons, tend to have taken charge. But hexagram 53 is the root of this, and we'll maybe look a bit more of that a little bit later on. So this represents the progress of the year. We're in the water dog month of October. Visually, there are two yang lines held within these kind of yang, these arms of the yin. And the image is of some grass. There's indicative, an indicative of the sound of it. I forgot what the word is. So grass and follower are the two things here, and following is very much what this is about. We will also look at, we'll get a moment, we'll look at where the water dog and this hexagram are on the low pan, because it's very interesting to see if they're saying the same things. So it's gathering together for a sacrifice. Whether by sacrifice we mean, in a modern sense, giving to a cause, or whether we mean literally, the giving of life, the offering up of life, whether we're talking about, a Wicker Man kind of thing, or Midsummer. Has anyone seen that movie Midsummer? Same kind of thing. Do you know what? I haven't seen it. Sheila doesn't want to see it. My daughter said we should see it, so I shall have to see it separately. But apparently, The Wicker Man, I do know. It's about ancient kind of atavistic rituals. But this is about perhaps the mother calling you home. It's perhaps about the dutiful daughter assisting. Perhaps the mother is calling the daughter. And the young are gathered below or within, trapped perhaps in the arms of the mother. But there's something about cooperation with leadership and advisors. And the theme is about leaders who take you to a place you need to be led to, rather than being persuaded to, go places that may be easy to go to, but are probably not the best idea. And lake is not enough to swamp the earth. This is an important thing to get. Water might swamp the earth, but lake will not. And you might compare this hexagram with hexagram 60, and also with hexagram 47. Hexagram 60 is restriction, which is water over lake. So it's where the lake is overcome, not voluntarily. And hexagram 47 is about exhaustion, but I think we'll return to those. We might also look at hexagram 7, which is an assembly, but it's also known as the army. So it's a forcible kind of assembly. But the nuclear, which I didn't say, being wind over mountain, has a kind of a curious aspect to it and a stubborn aspect to it. It speaks of origins of whatever conundrum is being dealt with by the person who has thrown this and person who's studying this, having historical origins, but very deep historical origins that don't move easily. And when we talk about mobs and assemblies, it's worth pointing out that the last water dog year was 1982. And in this country, we were in a period of riots. We had riots between 1981 and 1985, 6 or 7 very big riots in this country between 1981 and 1985. So 1982 is right in the thick of that, about the irreconcilable differences between water and earth, by which you might mean communication and conservatism with a small c, perhaps. So let's have a look at the text. So the text of the Gua just meaning image, Zhuang Gong Da Gua, which is to do with Da Gua, the great image, a hexagram. So the first line, which you should have this here. You've got the text of the hexagram, I hope. The Gua text, a long text about the king going to the ancestral temple to commune with the ancestors, a gathering that bridges the worlds, which is brought out in line 2. It's kind of optimistic, perhaps not realistic. It says it's advantageous to see the great man as well as to have a place to go. So it says it's probably a good idea to have a leader, and it's probably a good idea to have a purpose, and probably a good idea if those are in tune with each other. So there's a need for guidance and a need for direction, is what the whole thing is saying. And we need to gather together and share our wisdom. So there is this thing, the wisdom of the crowd, but the crowd can also be pretty brutal and pretty not wise. So maybe it's saying that you can move on, but you need assistance. There's a theme here about loneliness, about not being connected. There's a theme about the courage required to get connected, that in order to have an intimate relationship, we have to take a few risks. In order to be part of a group, we need to take a few risks. But the yang lines are the governing lines, and we can see how those yang lines either represent or do not the lower lines. The ultimate gathering is the family. And we might compare this to hexagram 37, Jaren, members of the family, where it's a window of fire, the metaphor being of fanning the flame, and this being the family. That might mean, you know, that it's Christmas and the same arguments come up and everybody, you know, falls out in exactly the same way, and that flame is fanned. So anyone been watching The Bear on TV? The series The Bear? Nobody know that? Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. But there's an episode where they're having Christmas lunch and everybody falls out, and it turns very unpleasant. Eventually, someone drives a car through the window. But fanning the flame can also mean going back to the source of your power. And the source of our power, for better or for worse, may well be related to our roots, to our heritage, to our family, to our parents, but also to our siblings, and also to the kind of safety and the unconditional love of family. But family, as one of my teachers said to me once, when you've handled family, you've handled everything. So we might compare it usefully with that. We might also compare it with B, union, number 8, which is water over earth, something like the other way up. We might also compare it to Tongren, number 13, which is heaven on fire. So it's usually translated as union, sometimes thought of as a communist symbol. As I said, we might compare it to 7. Theoretically, I studied with a guy called Peter Firebrace about 25 years ago, a brilliant acupuncturist who gave me a lot of ideas. I studied with him, and you know, some of these ideas are indeed his. He would say there is no blame in this hexagram, although the 3rd and the 6th are difficult, and I think possibly we might be a bit more extreme than that. So if we look at the line texts, which hopefully, I think you've got the line text. Everyone got the line text? Yeah. So the first line, the 6 at the first, so a yin at the first, is incorrect because the first line should be yang. It's not central. It doesn't follow the middle path. So it is weak, but it does resonate with the 4th line. So there is the possibility of help coming from some kind of connection with those outside of our social group, possibly socially our, in quotation marks, superiors, certainly people more obviously in power. It's maybe about networking. So if you were to throw this and get changing the first line, it might be about the number of handshakes it would take you to get to someone who could actually make a difference. It changes to sway following. A little bit later, we'll look at the dates where this change might take place, so that we can relate this to some kind of forecasting, which is where we're going to go with this long term. But it changes to number 17, sway following, which is lake over thunder. So it just means that we change the first line, the bottom line, which is it's following in several different senses. It's following in the sense, do you follow what I'm saying? It's following in the sense, are you the follower of somebody? And it's sometimes translated as mindless obedience, that kind of following. And it illustrates also a thing that I noticed particularly, which is that when the yin line is on top, the direction, that the management, if you like, is very different. When the yang line is on top, it tends to be dictatorial. When the yin line is on top, it tends to be about relationships. So this change is to following somebody, taking up an idea, possibly without sufficient critical attention. And the text is having sincerity not to the end, i.e. not having full sincerity. Chuck Spezzano would say that 100% openness is absolutely safe, 99% is suicidal. 100% openness is absolutely safe, 99% is suicidal. So what this is saying is that there is not enough sincerity. So it's a weak kind of a line. And it says now chaos, now gathering. So going back and forth between anarchy and gathering, and going back and forth between order and being a part of something, suggesting that kind of vacillating relates to having no connection, perhaps no relationship, but no proper connection, having not taken the risk to be really connected. The next part of the line, as by a signal, one hug produces smiles. The image apparently is a man bent double with laughter, which is kind of sweet. But it suggests that persistent good heart work. So it's following that thought through again. The next line, Wushu Wang Wu Jin, don't worry, go, no blame. So it's not strong, but it's supported by line 4. It depends on line 4. This person, the first of the 3 representatives of the people, is dependent upon the good intentions of the advisors to power. The support not of the emperor, but of the next down in the chain of command, someone naturally resonant with you at line 4. And if this is about relationship, it's that you may have to reach out to find someone who gets who you are. Calling out resolves the problem is the point. Asking for help is what's required. That's what line 1 is apparently saying. What Thomas Cleary says is reforming error and returning to correctness. Reforming error and returning to correctness. The second line is correct because the yin line should be at the second line. It is central, so that it is following the middle path, and it resonates with the 5th line. So there's a very hopeful line. It changes to number 47, kun, exhaustion, which is lake over water. And kun, that kind of exhaustion is the exhaustion perhaps of catching up with your emails on a Saturday morning, the exhaustion of being on a commuter train at 5:30 in the morning, the need to be 100% prepared before going back into your office. That kind of ambition, which perhaps leads to burnout, leads to that kind of exhaustion. I tend to think of this as being burnout. The image is of the water running out of the lake and everything being lost, but it's a voluntary exhaustion. It's different from the exhaustion of restriction in Hexagram 60, which is water over lake. This comes from ambition, possibly fatuous ambition, possibly the attachment to what are currently called bullshit jobs, not doing what your heart makes your heart sing. So the message here is of doing what you want to do rather than what you think you have to do. And this is the only lower line in the correct position. So it's perhaps suggesting that you have to take a decision as to whether your ambition is fatuous or not. It's attracted by line 5. Your perfect partner is at line 5, so maybe that will reach down to you. Suggests that if you're looking for a partner, if that's what this is about, be ambitious. One of the mistakes that people make in seeking relationship is being frightened to be in relationship with people who challenge them. That's generally a male mistake rather than a female mistake, a terror of powerful women. So if a man looking for a relationship were to throw this, it's suggesting bottle up. Be prepared to a woman who might be smarter than you, might be more powerful, might be so beautiful you're intimidated, but give it a go is what this is suggesting. It's suggesting both line 1 and line 2 need partners. Only a small offering required because of the sincerity of line 2. So line 2 is better placed. Profit by the offerings at season of sacrifice. So an acknowledgement of the divine and a thanksgiving. Cleary says, preserving rectitude even when weak. So the courage to do the right thing even when it might not be the easiest. And maybe the advice if you've got changing line 2. 6 of the 3rd, that line is incorrect. It's not central, has no resonance. It would need to have resonance with line 6 and it doesn't. It's the last yin right line of the lower trigram, and it changes to hexagram 31, which is sometimes a xian, sometimes called influence. But interpreters tend to beat around the bush with this, almost literally, in that it describes the act of sexual congress. because it's talking about trembling feet and then trembling knees and so on going up through the body. So presumably the exciting bit is line 3 and line 4. In the official PRC Book of Changes, it avoids the subject altogether. I have a copy of that somewhere. So it may well be about finding your perfect sexual partner. But it's also saying gathering now, size now. You're not quite getting there. It's not quite working. You're perhaps not doing what's required to be recognized. Peter Firebrace said it was difficult but not calamitous. Line 3 should team up with line 6, which may actually be a best friend. It may even be about a gay relationship, but this will be the next best thing. And Cleary says it's a gathering in which the weak gain strength. Finding the right way and the right person involves going beyond the self and being sociable. It involves taking risks. So that, as I say, this may apply to simply looking for a relationship. It may relate to a more sophisticated question. It may also relate to the political situation as it stands right now. A lot of this is about differences between nations that seem to be absolutely irreconcilable. And of course, the lake is in the west and the mother is in the southwest. So this may relate geographically to certain problems that are going on in the world at the moment. So 9/4 is incorrect because it's a yang line where a yin line should be. This is the advisor. And the change would be to B, which is union, perhaps the hexagram of the European Union, perhaps of the United Arab Emirates, perhaps of the United States, perhaps of a federal solution to various political problems. It's a difficult situation. The minister supporting the king at line 5 is himself supported by the 3 lines of the common people. So what we have potentially is someone not leading, but following the people who need him to lead. Again, which is one of the themes of this. So the text is great good fortune, no blame. The truth and union are the outcome of good behavior. 9/5, this is correct, this is the ruler. A brilliant leader, but a warning that his underconfidence may make him proud and willful, and he must take the central path. This is the heart of this, whether the ruler is being well advised and whether the advisors have the goodwill, well-being of the people at heart. So the text, gathering has its place, no blame. The leader is too powerful without the necessary qualities of high position. So what Plato said was that the leader needs to be someone who has to be dragged kicking and screaming to leadership. Plato reckoned that autocracy was the best form of government because it didn't involve endless debates before action was taken, but it needed to be the leader needed to be someone who really didn't want to do it. And the problem is that most people who are attracted to power, they're attracted to power. That's perhaps the problem. So this speaks of a weak and possibly corrupt leader, one who has lost sight of what it means to look after their people. And the top line, it's the reckoning, because it relates to Shen, to spirit, to a looking in the mirror, and whether the leader can do that and look themselves in the eye. And it is to do with whether this, when whatever your reality is about what happens beyond this life, but whether we have been bent out of shape, whether this leader has been bent out of shape by the way that he behaves. And so there is a reckoning here, and it's not resonant with anybody. And it changes to hexagram number 12, which is P, stagnation, and it's number 12, which is heaven over earth, is elusive, kind of misleading, because you'd think heaven over earth, heaven's in the right place, it's on top, earth is underneath, it's mother and father. You'd think, well, that looks like a good one, but it isn't. And the reason that it isn't is because heaven is going upwards and earth is going down. So it's a separation, a stagnation, because things are not working. It's a stubborn situation that will not change without goodwill. In fact, it's a stubborn situation that will not change without a spiritual watershed. It's something that is absolutely insoluble by logic. There's no easy flow. They don't meet. She is weak and unable to unite the people. That's what Huang says, and he uses the pronoun she, interestingly. The text says sighs, laments, tears, no blame. Peter Fabre said the leader is crying because she is too weak to gather the people without help. Others hearing these cries, realizing their needs, support them. Not ultimately desolate, expressing and sharing the loneliness leads to some sort of resolution. Things must be done with proper reference to the whole. So we're dealing here with leaders who are not referring to the whole, who are not considering the bigger picture in what they do. I sent you also a line-by-line breakdown. And if you want to get that in front of you, we can now look at how we might use this as a predictive tool. So if we consider that we have a month of 30 days, we have 6 lines, each one rules 5 days. So this method of dividing from a hexagram suggests things happen at different times, particular times, in 5 day chunks, if you like. So line 1, when negative and weak, people form mobs, believing what they shouldn't, rallying around what they shouldn't. I think that's Wilhelm, believing what they shouldn't, rallying around what they shouldn't. And this may ring some bells in certain current situations. I mean, several current situations. In the Middle East, in the southwest of the USA, in northeastern Europe too. Anyway, that kicks in on the 8th of October. So the 8th of October, this response to the situation is one of mindless obedience. And if you were to key that into the 8th of October, you might draw some conclusions about that. Line 2, which kicks in on the 13th, the middle of 3 yins, is preserving rectitude when weak. So it means that even though you're not strong, you have to stay ethical. You have to stay strong even when you're not strong. You have to trust. Loving and trusting may be the only sane way to approach life. But if you don't do that, perhaps it changes to hexagram 47, that form of exhaustion that I was talking about. And hexagram 47, obviously enough, follows 46, which follows 45. And I don't think I'll go into it at this point, but I have an idea that where we are at the moment is in a sequence that starts with hexagram 45 and goes to hexagram 52. And this idea of pointless ambition is rather important. The pointless ambition may well relate to the ones who are leaders. Line 3, gathering in which the weak, that is the morally compromised, need to borrow strength from the strong in order to do the right thing. It's seeking of comfort, so it takes us back perhaps the original image of the youngest daughter and the mother. It is also, if you understand the breakdown of Chinese months, the hidden stems of the dog fall in this next 5 days. So the hidden stems of the dog are yin fire that suddenly appears, that's been held over from summer, and of course we're way past summer. And historically, things like market crashes and various battles have happened in that 3-4 day period in the month of October. So that's the implication of it, and the changes to hexagram 31, influence, intimacy. I mean, you know, what can that mean? Maybe that's about distraction from chaos. The fourth line, one of the rulers, gathering when strong and flexible, what's required is advice to the rulers that they can trust and that is that serves the whole. And the change is to be union, so that might suggest that it is to do with cooperation if that is taken. But this ongoing lesson from this, which is that leaders need to be ethical, they need to consider the ultimate good of the people rather than their own ambition as a priority, and that the advisors to them need to be brave enough to tell them what they need to know. Line 5, gathering balance and higher knowledge and taking only appropriate steps. This is what the ruler needs to do. And that line changes it to thunder over earth. Hexagram 16, ye, sometimes called enthusiasm, but it's kind of a burst of joy at a moment of victory, which may or may not be an appropriate joy to be expressing, a moment perhaps of short-term victory. And line 6, the self-harm of self-indulgence. I've put in the characters sheep and dog because, again, if you understand the rules of Bazi, sheep and dog is a breakup. That's what that looks like. And that possibly the character for the demagogue, the conscience-free populist, is perhaps the sheep, perhaps with the dog. So for a summary, line 1, a need for persistence and asking for help. Line 2, beneficial attraction to line 5, make an offering. The advice is to make an offering. Line 3, everyone has a partner but me, but you might find one at line 6, but you have to stick with it, and you have to become vulnerable, and you have to open. Line 4 is interceding between the king, the emperor, and the people, and it's the integrity of that guy that really matters most. Line 5 has everything but reluctant to take the credit, and this is to do with reform. Some would say the line 5 is about reform, about particular types of government reaching their logical extreme. So there are perhaps at this point in history some regimes that have gone as far as they can do. There may be regimes that have talked themselves or bombed themselves or taken various acts of violence that have taken them to a point where they are totally isolated, and possibly therefore their future is in doubt. So you might think of hexagram 45, sway, gathering, as being the point at which things change. If you look at the years that relate to the water dog, many of them are just before things happen. The 1864, is that a water dog? Why am I saying that? No, it isn't. 1685, the next year after, 1684. So there's some of these years, 1264, when Simon de Montfort's Parliament. Oh, cup of tea, thank you. Sorry, I'm just. Thank you.
I don't think you want me.
I don't think we'll need to do that. No. But these events, the English Revolution, Scottish Uprising 1745, the Glorious Revolution 1685. I apologize, these are all English history, but I know English history best, so sorry. But it suggests a shake-up that changes everything, a big change. So we get a water dog before things kind of go to zero. What Wilhelm says is only collective moral force can unite the world. A need of great deeds Forearming is called for because large gatherings of men can be unpredictable and uncontrollable. And this is, for me, this is the image of the gathering. Large gatherings of men can be unpredictable and uncontrollable. I would tend to say there is not a problem in the world that has not been created by groups of men unsupervised. And I suggest, ladies, that your job is to supervise. And I suggest, Mahu Siddhal and me, our job is to pay attention and to listen. So I'll just give you what Wilhelm says. He says, line 1, beware of the foolishness of the crowd attached to the leader. Line 2, secret forces are at work, bringing the right people together. Line 3, the awkward outsider will need to attach himself to one closer to the heart of the group in order to belong. That's a kind of a statement, a kind of a Tao statement. It's saying, perhaps, that we know the right moment to do things. We know when it's too early, we know when it's too late, and we know the right person to involve as well. And sometimes that may be a bit daunting. But line 3 is saying, recognize that and act on it. And line 4 says, success goes to the man unselfishly acting on behalf of his ruler, which is the key to this. And the leader, line 5, the leader must gain respect and loyalty by steadfastness and unswerving devotion to duty. It was Burke who said that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And by the way, he worked for the East India Company, which was the first and most ruthless of the multinational companies. So he's a bit of a confused man. But more recently, somebody else said that it is power attracts the corrupt. It's as simple as that. So the business part of this is line 4 and line 5. And the leader needs to behave like a leader. And line 5, good intentions may be misunderstood, persist, that's offering hope. So when the leader looks in the mirror and says, you know what, I may have done very badly, there may be terrible karmic repercussions from the way that I have behaved, there is still a chance for them to be redeemed.